Have you ever heard of a fairy ring? Well, I got it tattooed on me. I finally did it. I finally got my very first tattoo. Look at this. Most of the time, whenever I tell people that I got a fairy ring tattoo, they think it's actually fairies, but these are mushrooms. So I kind of wanted to talk about it today, because now it's tattooed on me forever. So why exactly is a circle of mushrooms called a fairy ring when there's no fairies? Is a fairy ring a portal into another realm? Today I wanted to talk about some folklore stories, but also personal encounters that I've read on Reddit. Fairy rings have some sort of magical properties around it, supposedly. So let's go ahead and look at some folklore stories of fairy rings. The first folklore story I wanted to talk about was the Celtic lore, the story of Rise and Llewellyn. Two friends were walking outside when they suddenly hear music. One steps into the fairy ring to dance. When he is finally pulled out by his friend a few minutes later, he discovers years have passed in the human world. Supposedly, this story is one of those folklores that makes people pretty suspicious of fairy rings in general. And then there's the invisibility glitch. Many European traditions warn people that if they step into the middle of a fairy ring, they will become invisible, but not in a good way. Witnesses often describe seeing someone step into a fairy ring and simply vanishing from existence. And then there's the folklore of toad protectors. In French folklore, this story is about protectors of the fairy ring. This kind of gives the idea that fairy rings aren't just an empty circle. Legend says huge bug-eyed toads often sit in the center of the ring, and if they enter, they will curse you. And then there's a few more extremes other than just people dancing or turning invisible in the middle of this ring. In the Tyrol region, myths believe the rings were scorched pieces of earth left by dragons in a fiery ring. In Germany, they are Hexenringe or witches' rings, formed by the heat of witches dancing on Walpurgis night. Pretty spooky stuff. But lastly, and this is the most common folklore, is that a fairy ring is a portal to another world. Many cultures, including Scandinavia and the Philippines, believe that these rings are gateways or portals to another world, perhaps fairyland. So I went ahead and looked at Reddit to see if there's any people that have actually encountered fairy rings in a more negative way. I know that fairy rings are often romanticized and thought of as whimsical parts of the world, and we're gonna get into the science of it later, but I kind of wanted to really understand some real life stories from people. So I went over to Reddit and I looked up a couple stories, and these are the ones that I thought were the most interesting. Story number 1. Here's the title of this one. I sat in the middle of a fairy ring, and this morning I saw a weird entity in my room. A fairy ring has been growing in my backyard around my tree. I know the lore behind fairy rings, and I said, you know what, F it. Let's see if it's legit or not. I sat in the ring of mushrooms for about 5 minutes before I got bored and got up. Nothing happened. This morning, I wake up and notice this black mass just chilling in my room on my ceiling with these multicolored lights, kind of like a spider. It's there for like 5 minutes just chilling there, which so happens to be the time frame I sat in the fairy ring. I figured getting abducted by the fae is better than working a 40-hour work week, lol. This story kind of ties to that idea that fairy rings are portals, and I don't know, do you think this story is legit? Let's read another one. Now this one was pretty spooky. If this is real, this is really scary. When I was younger, I got lost in a fairy ring. When I was 9, I was with my family on a camping trip in Tennessee. I wandered away to explore and ended up finding a circle of mushrooms, and for some reason, I ended up feeling compelled to step inside. While I was there, everything around me was dead quiet. No birds or even bugs. It chilled me even as a kid. When I stepped out of the ring, I noticed it had gotten extremely dark and I heard my name being called. Long story short, my parents had called the police and got a search party going. Apparently, I'd been missing for about 6 hours. It had only felt like a few minutes to me. Fairy ring. This story was pretty long, so I kind of added the fairy ring part of the story, and so I just skipped to the diary entry that they gave when they were a kid. Dear Diary, it has been 4 days since I finished my last diary. A lot has happened. I've done something very stupid, and now I don't know what to do. On Tuesday, like normal, I went home after school, and they needed some help in the garden with weeding. I offered to do it, and when I went out, I saw this huge ring of mushrooms in the middle of the lawn. They said it had just sprung up overnight and called it a fairy ring. She said that the fairies put them up and punished anyone who tried to mess with them. I just thought it was a mess and decided to weed it, which must have been the bloody stupidest thing I've ever done. Mrs. Macclesfield fainted when I pulled one of them up. Like, honestly, fainted dead away. She didn't even say anything. I just heard a gasp and a thump as she hit the ground. I left after that. Everybody rushed around Mrs. Macclesfield and I was in the way. That night I had a nightmare. I had it the next night as well, and last night. Tonight I'm going to try to take some cough syrup to make myself sleep better. That'll stop me having it again. It always starts the same way. I'm in the fairy ring, but I'm shrunk down small, so the mushrooms look like mountains. Then these hands, my hands, come down and pull them up. 1 the first night, 2 the next, 3 the third, and it hurts. Like the mushrooms are a part of me. Like I imagine someone ripping an arm off. When I wake up, I can't move, I can't scream, and it keeps burning. Like I've got a gagging open wound or something until the sun comes up. Whoa. Dang, that's a crazy story. Spooky. While there are some really cool theories and very scary theories in folklore about fairy rings, there's actually some really cool biology to why fairy rings are formed in the first place. A fairy ring is not just a random bunch of mushrooms growing in a circle. It's actually a single organism underground, the mycelium, that has developed its own network. Whenever conditions are right, it will sprout out its fruiting bodies, aka the mushroom. This is the time where the mushroom feels it is best equipped to release all of its spores, which is why you may see mushrooms pop up after rain and not for very long either. The mycelium grows at a very fast speed, like a ripple in a pond, and that's how mushrooms are made. There's actually some interesting science behind different types of fairy rings as well. This is all determined by the type of mushroom that has decided to make a fairy ring. Scientists have actually categorized fairy rings on how they interact with the grass. Ediphatic fairy rings often affect the grass that makes it lush or it kills it. Non-ediphatic is simply a circle of mushrooms that doesn't change the vegetation at all and just sprouts up the mushrooms. There's type 1, which is the dead zone. This fungus creates a hydrophobic layer in the soil, which means that it repels the grass, creating this dead zone. This is maybe why some of the folklore has determined that maybe dragons were the cause of these fairy rings. These dead zones can happen whether you see fruiting bodies or not. This is simply just the organism under the ground getting ready for those mushrooms to push through. And then there's the type 2, the lush green ring. This type of fungus actually breaks down the organic matters and releases nitrogen. This honestly acts like a natural fertilizer and allows the grass in a perfect circle to grow even more than the grass around it. So this does the pretty much opposite effect from the circle of death type 1 fairy ring. This one's not bad to look at, but it is kind of creepy. It's in a circle. And then there's the type 3 ring, the ghost ring. This is when the mushrooms are the only things that appear, usually after a heavy rain, and there is no change to the grass itself. This is one of the more magical ones that you see just randomly there's mushrooms in my yard. This is type 3, the ghost ring. Just mushrooms appear and no change to the actual grass is happening. Not every single species of mushrooms develops fairy rings, but there are lots that do. Most of the ones that do are the types of mushrooms that grow in the ground as opposed to on stumps or on trees. There are actually over 60 known species of fungi that can produce these circular patterns. Not every kind of mushroom actually creates these fairy rings, so I wanted to mention the top mushrooms that do. The first one is called the fairy ring champion. It is the most classic ring former, and it is often found in grassy areas. It is edible and known for its ability to dry out and revive with rain. This just means this mushroom will not die once it's dried completely. It'll be revived with water, which is an interesting one. And then there's the meadow mushroom. This is a field mushroom that is a close relative of the button mushroom. This one often forms in large rings in meadows. The horse mushroom often grows in pastures that appear normally near horses. This is because of the nitrogen-rich soil. This is also a mushroom that grows a lot of fairy rings. There are also a few other grass-dwelling species that form fairy rings. Some include the false parasol. This mushroom is toxic and often mistaken for the edible one that looks very similar. And then there's the purple spored puffball. This type of puffball creates rings in pastures. Then there is the bluet, a wood bluet. This mushroom is known for its beautiful violet hue, and it often forms rings in leaf litter or compost-rich grass. And then there's the giant funnel. This mushroom can produce massive rings, sometimes up to 200 feet in diameter. Although a lot of fairy rings form in grassy lands, there are a few that grow in forests and in wooded areas. Rings are formed by fungi that have symbiotic relationships with tree roots as well, like the fly amanita, the death cap, matsutake, the hedgehog mushroom, and the clouded funnel. These are all species of mushrooms that grow in the forest and produce fairy rings. One of the oldest fairy rings to ever exist is 700 years old. It's in Belfort, France, and it's approximately 600 meters across, or 2,000 feet. It has been there so long that scientists have predicted that it is 700 years old. Crazy. Whether you think that fairy rings are magical, crazy, creepy, all of the above, whatever they are, they exist. And I got one tattooed on me. Let me know if you guys have ever experienced a fairy ring in real life and if you're compelled to sit inside of it. I think there is a beautiful part of nature a lot of us feel that tug and pull for, especially in the day and age of social media and technology, when our minds maybe crave nature. I have had a few fairy rings pop up just around me in my house. The shaggy parasol one, or the regular parasol one, was the one that was primarily popping up everywhere. This is a type of mushroom that's more white, pretty basic looking, doesn't really get very big, but there is a couple of really heavy rains and all of the mushrooms all over my neighborhood just popped up out of nowhere. It's really cool to learn about mushrooms because now I can kind of identify them whenever I see them in real life. It's super fun. If you guys want the shaggy parasol mushroom trading card, I actually have that for sale, and I have a mushroom club if you would like to be part of it. I make trading cards based on real types of fungi in the wild every single month or 2 a month, depending on how much energy I have. Joining the mushroom club is just another way to support me as an artist in my endeavors, as I am making everything handmade. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you have any cool fairy ring stories, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'm very curious to hear your stories. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.